You can learn a lot from politicians' financial disclosures. You can get an idea of whether their ethics are on the up and up in terms of whether they're using personal information to personally profit for themselves. But there's actually a lot more you can learn. And we're gonna be joined by a guest who's been sifting through this and finding out some pretty shockingly personal stuff about these politicians. You've probably guessed it if you know the Damage Report. We're joined once again by the deputy editor for Insider, Dave Levinthal. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, John, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. Always down to talk financial disclosures with you. But this time, this is an angle I did not predict. You have apparently shown how, by looking at these financial disclosures, you could, in theory, predict some pretty personal stuff about politicians. Talk us through this.
I mean, look, these things they're typically pretty dry, pretty boring. Every once in a while, you find a lawmaker doing something wrong, even illegal. You definitely have conflicts of interest that we have written about time and time again for months and months and months. But wasn't banking on these financial documents that get filed by politicians to potentially predict that they were going to get divorced. But yet, this is what we found with one Kanye West. Remember, he ran for president back in 2020, and we went back and looked at his financial disclosures that he filed about his personal finances back in late 2020 when he was still running for president. And he made a very curious disclosure, or for that matter, non-disclosure, saying, actually, I'm not gonna fill out some of this personal financial information because of circumstances that he really didn't detail. Well, there's a little provision, John, in federal law that says if you're getting divorced or you have split up with your spouse, that you do not have to disclose their personal finances that you otherwise would have to do. Kanye, well, he invoked that little, element in federal law, which at the time didn't really seem like anything, but well, 4 months later, Kim Kardashian West, she was filing for divorce from Kanye West.
Well, look, this is fascinating, not only because you've shown that we have a case of this. There are politicians currently serving who this could influence their future financial disclosures. It's also for some, that might be watching this and then thinking about future runs, this could potentially come into play. I mean, if Donald Trump doesn't want to disclose things, he could press the eject button on Melania and then buy himself a few months potentially. I'm very curious, you talked about this as being this provision. Do they have to prove it in any way? I mean, if you get divorced, that's easy to demonstrate, but you said that they could just in theory be separated. That seems like a thing that you could game if you wanted to.
Maybe, but if you're going ahead and using this little provision in law to not disclose financial information about your spouse, probably means that something is up there. And there's sort of the wait, but there's more with Kanye, and not involving Kanye, but two sitting members of Congress. We look back at the records and we looked at Madison Cawthorn, the representative from North Carolina, famously troubled, and he lost in his primary earlier this year. He's going to be out of Congress, but he filed a financial disclosure, which was very curious because in the months after he got married in 2021, he didn't reveal anything about his spouse, who on social media and other places was lauding as the most wonderful person that he has ever met and has changed his life. But yet his financial disclosures indicated that he hadn't merged any of his finances with his spouse, that he didn't disclose any information, financially speaking, about his new spouse. And well, what happened? After about 8 months, they got divorced. Marjorie Taylor Greene, may have heard her name, representative from Georgia. She is also getting divorced from her husband of many, many years. And what we noted in reporting earlier this year is that her spouse was making investments, which Marjorie Taylor Greene did disclose, that were wildly curious because of who the investments were with. They were with companies, for example, that were in essence like Walmart and Amazon and several others that had made statements that were absolutely diametrically opposed to the political philosophies and leanings of Marjorie Taylor Greene, which don't have to tell you and your viewers are pretty far right in a lot of ways. So in essence, he was investing in companies that said, Black Lives Matter, we love them, great, awesome, go for it. Talking about LGBTQ issues and being wonderfully supportive of those causes. Marjorie Taylor Greene, very not there. So it was just this kind of odd curiosity and wrinkle, though, that got to the heart of what was clearly a personal rift between Marjorie Taylor Greene and her husband that played out in kind of final form and fashion back in September when Perry Greene, her husband, filed for divorce against Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I find this to be fascinating, and I want to get your opinion on something, because I don't know if there's a journalist in the country who spends more time on or cares more about these financial disclosures, believes that these laws, to the limited extent that there are any regulations of this sort of thing, that they should be followed. But obviously, we're now in the area of divorce, and I think that relationships are complicated. I generally don't invest much of my thought into the marital troubles of even people that I disagree with, or in the case of Marjorie Greene, openly despise. And so it feels like it makes sense that there should be an allowance for a bit of secrecy, or I don't know, some sort of legal respect for a difficult period. And yet we need access to this information. There's a lot of legitimate concerns about corruption. And we know that already they don't willingly give a lot of information. Much of it, as we've often talked about, is super late if it's given at all. So as someone who delves into these a lot, what are your thoughts about the ability to hide some of this stuff during these periods? Do the laws make sense? Do you think that they should be shifted?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment, John. It also is, raising questions in my own mind about my life choices, but be that as it is. I mean, this really, your question gets to the heart of the matter of why does this matter? Why should people care? And really at the heart of the law that is on the books, it's called the Stock Act, the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act, passed 10 years ago. It is about corruption. It is about conflicts of interest and defending against potential conflicts of interest that lawmakers, or for that matter, their spouses may have with the official duties that they're here in Washington, D.C. to take care of. One very notable example very recently where this has come into play and with great controversy is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Her husband is a incredibly aggressive stock trader, one of the most aggressive stock traders from a personal standpoint, in addition to a professional standpoint, of any congressional spouse, trading tens and tens of millions of dollars every year in stocks, and in doing so to the benefit of himself and his spouse, who is the Speaker of the House. Now, meanwhile, this is all happening during a debate ongoing in Congress. There could be a vote as soon as November to ban members of Congress from trading stocks because, as you just alluded to, we have found dozens of examples here at Insider of lawmakers violating the Stock Act in one way or another. Most of them for sometimes going months or even years without disclosing their stock trades in the first place. So the public has the ability to find out and decide for itself whether conflicts of interest even exist in the first place. So Nancy Pelosi's husband doing this while there is an active congressional debate going on, and also too trading stock in, I'll give you one example, Nvidia, the chip maker, and doing so to the tune of 6-7 figures in just the immediate days before Congress was considering the CHIPS Plus bill, which was pumping billions of taxpayer dollars into a program that would invest in domestic production and support and research for computer chips when semiconductors and other technology of the sort has become very difficult to get access to.
I'm going to be watching that. I'm just fascinated to see it. It feels like it reached this critical point and they're sort of dragging it out. I really hope that they can make progress on that. And to go back to the compliments, if they do, it will be in no small part thanks to the work of both you and the Insider team. So thank you for that, for joining us on the show today. Everyone watching, definitely check out Dave's work. Sometimes it touches on the relationships of politicians. Generally, it touches on concerns over corruption and all of that. Really do appreciate you joining us, Dave. Thank you as always.
Thank you, John.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.